federal, state, and local officials that were a part of the secret society. Judge William Hayden declared in public that if they were opposed, the streets of Salt Lake would be seen running with blood.
And so a lot of you understand that America's history has been messed with. But fewer people understand how Utah's history has been messed with. And welcome back to the second hour of the Naked Truth on the Liberty Lineup show. And we are going to talk to you about the history of Utah and some things you have not heard about the history of Utah. Things we all ought to know from the research archives of Defending Utah. Stay tuned. And welcome back. This is Enoch Moore and Ben McClintock, the Naked Truth segment of the Liberty Lineup radio show on K-Talk. Check out our new website, ktalkmedia.com, and also defendingutah.org, where we have a whole list of articles with some really in-depth research for the past several years on all things Utah that you won't get anywhere else. That's what we do at defendingutah.org. In fact, at Defending Utah, you hear us talk about it a lot on Thursday on this show because that's kind of what we're involved with, and that's how we got connected to this radio show. But we haven't always talked in depth, I guess, about what we're doing, and we thought maybe we'd let you listeners know a little more about what it is that we're doing. And I think this will be enjoyable if you're a history buff or if you just really want to understand some of the nuts and bolts of the state. We've got a lot of good research to cover. Ben McClintock, you are a heavy researcher. You're always researching something, aren't you? You've got so many questions and so many leads and so many rabbit holes to go down, all related to Utah.
History is an important thing. It's something that was, what's his name, Orwell, that wrote the book 1984. He explained the importance of hiding people's history and helping us to not know what was really going on. He explained
the importance for bad guys.
Right. He says so George Orwell. He said the most effective way to destroy a people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history.
But that is something that tyrants have used against all kinds of different people, all parts of the world throughout all of history, right? You have, in Australia, that was done to the Aborigines in Australia. That was done to American Indian tribes, the Cherokee. So this is just a pattern of, I don't like these people. They're a threat to my power. Let's destroy their history so that they stop complaining about me.
Right. And they like their situation. They start to like their chains because you are patriotic for whatever country you're in. Supporting whatever situation that you're in is patriotic. And if you don't understand that what your history was and what led you there, you don't understand that you're in chains. And so it's essential for us in the effort to preserve liberty, we have to understand our own history.
If we don't understand our history, or if we understand it wrong.
Right. Well, it's the same thing as understanding it, right.
That actually is worse, understanding it wrong. And that's what public schools do.
That's their job.
Their job is to destroy our understanding of history. Yes, there's truth mixed in with the facts, but,
Right, if it was all lies, if they said our first president was Barack Obama, it would be ridiculous and nobody would even...
Right, they'd say there's something really wrong. Everybody would say there's something wrong, but if you say 99 truths and then the one lie that matters.
Right. Or they leave out things. Everything in there is true, but what they leave out is what's of vital importance as well. So those are different ways to be able to manipulate history.
Right. If a salesman comes to you and he wants to sell you a $1,000 widget, but he doesn't tell you that if you pick the blue one, they're only $50. And he's telling you all about the advantages of his widget, and then it costs $1,000. But he never told you the one thing that mattered that would have freed you to
solve the problem.
For you.
Yeah.
And so changing our history, changing America's history, and changing Utah's history, and many people who have studied liberty understand how America's history has changed. We're not a democracy, we're a republic, but we're constantly told we're a democracy in history books, and it's garbage, it's not true. And so a lot of you understand that America's history has been messed with in these ways. But if fewer people understand how Utah's history has been messed with, here's one of the biggest lies in Utah politics. The LDS Church secretly wields power from behind the curtain, right? As if the church runs this state. Boy, if you understand Utah's history, what you'll know is at one point they did, but that was conspiratorially destroyed. In fact, there were secret societies set up, and you've done all this research, Ben, that their entire function was to destroy the political influence of the church. And now we have all these problems today with religious liberty and with we could go on and on. There's a big everyone we understand all these problems we have today, but it isn't. The church is not wielding power or controlling any of this. That has been specifically destroyed already.
Right.
If the church was wielding power, you would see religious liberty. You would see more people left alone. You would see Utah operating more like with the principles of our constitutional republic. But as long as people have this belief that, the church, like liberals have this belief, the church is wielding power because of all these religious Republicans or whatever.
It's basically a mantra that's put out there on purpose to be able to take away more power from religious institutions, because it's a reaction. You accuse you of doing something, you're going to prove, quote unquote, prove that you're not that bad person. You're going to overreact and overcompensate to prove that you're not what you're being accused of.
And the state does not want any competition from any religion. So the more that they make people believe...
State meaning the government in general.
Right, the state meaning government in general. Right, tyrants don't want competition. They want all loyalty with the state, with their government, with their rule. So if they tell you, look, the one competition that all governments have throughout all history are people who have a conviction to their religious beliefs, right? They'll say, well, gee, I can't follow that law because God says thou shalt not steal, or whatever your religion is, that violates my morality. So people tend to have a loyalty to their morals. Unless they have no morals, then they have a loyalty to the state, if according to a state's propaganda program. Right. So that's what we're talking about. The LDS Church does not wield political power.
And that's a pretty wild claim that people are going to be shocked that you would try and say that. And so I think it's important that we kind of get into those details.
And in those details is if you study our history, you'll understand it makes sense.
And that's just a part of what we do at Defending Utah. Kind of you talked about how we're talking about what we do at Defending Utah. And it's a step-by-step approach. First, we have to understand our history, and we have to understand the principles of liberty, and understand that the history helps us to understand the enemies of liberty, and so that then we can have an actual effective organization to defend liberty. And so if you're interested in being able to do that, we hope that you'll go to defendingutah.org, click on the membership link, and either support our activities through a one-time donation or through membership. Membership has its benefits, which are on the website listed there. Also, we have some special gifts for people that just give one-time donation. We have different gifts that we have. We have the ability to be able to get our all of our research materials, our original source materials. Also, we've got some gifts on
thousands of documents from archives you won't get anywhere else as thank you gifts we give away, and front site memberships. For people who donate as thank you gifts, we show our appreciation.
And so if that's something you want to do, go to defendingutah.org and click on membership and either do a one-time donation or sign up for membership. But getting back to the history, understanding the claim that you made there, Enoch, is going to be pretty wild. And it's going to lead us right into the break. But this is John Taylor, okay? He was an early founding father of the state of Utah. And in 1886, He stated in the Deseret News, he talks about the things that were going on at the time. There was a lot of oppression coming into the state from the federal government. And it wasn't just the federal government that was the enemy. John Taylor explained that the scenes which we are now witnessing in the territory are the results of a deep-laid and carefully planned conspiracy.
He put this in the Deseret News.
Right.
And he's trying to tell everyone in this publication, the major publication in the state, here's how you understand what we're dealing with.
Right.
Right?
You have to understand that these things are not happening on accident. This isn't the accidental theory of history, that there are actual people conspiring to bring about the situation that we were in. And the idea of conspiracy has been bred out of us. Speaking about conspiracy was actually very common during the 1800s. 17 and 1800s, everybody recognized and warned each other about conspiracies that were going on because they were recognized as fact, because anybody that understands history understands the fact of conspiracy.
Conspiracy is just a group of one or more people who want to advance an agenda, but they just don't want to make it public.
Right.
So if you have an agenda and you don't want to say, this is why I'm doing this, and your real reason is hidden, you are now conspiring with whoever's working with you.
Right. And so he said what was going on was the results, he said, of a carefully planned conspiracy. He said, which has been been the process of formation for years. And its originators knew the elements that they had to deal with, and by cunning contrivance, they have effected a wonderful combination. And he said that the conspirators have appealed to the prejudices of each of those involved to get him to work in concert for this common end, which was the common end was to get Mormons and Mormonism out of politics. And so he called it a conspiracy, and he called the people involved conspirators. It was pretty obvious. And it says these were people that were involved. It's not. He's called it a motley crew of a motley collection of human beings that was never witnessed before. That they were people that were religious and irreligious, rich, poor, people from all aspects of life were all gathered together in this effort to combine, he says, quoting, to destroy Mormonism and then Mormonism's influence.
They combined for a purpose. That's what it means by a combination.
Right.
And when they say a secret combination, it means a group of people who, unaware to the general public, are combining for a purpose.
And so as we get back from the break, who were these secret combinations? Who were these conspirators? It was actually a common occurrence to talk about these things in the official history of the state back in the 1800s. Which we'll talk about when we get back from the break. But we'll hope if you like our efforts and you like what we're doing, go to defendingutah.org and click on membership, and we'll be back from the break after these short messages.
From the waves of the ocean, we head for the hills with the high tide approaching, as sand slips away from the castle.
And we are back. And we are talking with Ben McClintock about his deep research that he and others at Defending Utah have been putting together. In fact, this is a group effort because there is a team of researchers that look into these things. And then you Ben, generally you're the spokesperson who presents the information
I'm the
in most scenarios. but there's a team that you have dozens of researchers I've seen, that
people with
PhDs behind you
in history and all that.
And so there's a lot of good that has come together. And so we're gonna wow people, I guess, with more good stuff. We're gonna wow.
Well, we've talked about we've been on the Liberty lineup every Thursday for the past from 10 to noon on AM 630 for the past year, and we mention our website every once in a while. We encourage you to look at our YouTube channel, but we never really talk about what it is that we do and what it is that we're about. And so we wanted to kind of give that opportunity for our listeners to really kind of get an in-depth understanding of what it is that we do understand what's going on. And because we understand what's going on, in the Art of War, Sun Tzu says that if you understand yourself, you understand your enemy, you cannot be imperiled in 100 battles. And so Defending Utah, in our efforts to defend liberty, because we understand our history that George Orwell said was essential in getting rid of to be able to support tyranny, if we understand our history, so that's a part of it, is understanding to be able to fight for liberty, we have to understand liberty. and then we can work our action program to preserve liberty. And so we're showing you a few tidbits of what members of Defending Utah get. This education on history and then education on action, what we can do about these things.
Just
so they can
whetting
be
your
effective.
appetites a little bit if this
It
intrigues
might
you.
interest you in supporting what we're doing or becoming a member.
If you have deeper questions you want to ask us, you can always go to our the contact link at defendingutah.org, or you can call the Defending Utah number and leave a message or ask for one of us at 801-877-3205, 801-877-3205. But Ben, you had something. You're showing that you have spoken to so many historians and other researchers also have, and the information that we have come up with, these PhDs in history have never heard of.
Right.
And you're going to explain why that is, not because one person is smarter or another, but there's a very specific reason why some things they've never heard of, because they were hidden on purpose.
They were hidden on purpose.
Start talking about that.
So there's these groups. There's a couple of different groups. We talked about it earlier before we went to the break. John Taylor mentioned that there was a deep-laid and carefully planned conspiracy, okay, to destroy Mormonism, get Mormons out of politics. Okay, what is this? So there was a conspiracy involved in these things, and there's been a conspiracy to make sure that people don't know about it as well. In the 1800s, there was, and even to today, and which we'll get into, but starting in the 1800s, there were secret societies. And these secret societies, they weren't afraid to talk about it in official histories back in the 1800s. Nowadays, it's because these secret organizations and these conspirators have taken over the historical societies. They don't talk about themselves, obviously. They don't want people to know about them. But in the 1800s, they would talk about them. And in the historical record, the official historical record of the state of Utah, it's a monthly periodical, back in the 1800s, discussed the fact that in 1872, a secret society called the Gentile League of Utah was organized in Salt Lake, its object being to break up the Mormon theocracy. Okay? So that was in the historical record, and that was published in 1890. And another historical record of the history of Salt Lake City by Edward Tollage that came out in the 1880s says, sometime after this, a secret society was organized in the city and mining camps known as the Gentile League of Utah. Its mission was to break up the Mormon theocracy. So these multiple different historical records of the time talked about this Gentile League, and its mission was to break up the the so-called Mormon theocracy.
So this information is in official historical records that are older official historical records.
Correct.
So people who study history today won't find that because
it's the people involved in these organizations don't put them in the new ones. I've got two history books in front of me.
So that's the key. I see these big fat history books you have here as a sample of your research work, and
of showing how of the cover up. These are an official histories of the state, official histories of the state back then. But now we have official histories of the state. I've got a 700-page history put out by the Utah State University Press that never mentions this organization.
Okay, that tells you something, because if these were mentioned in the official records 130 years ago or however, 100 plus years ago, and they're not there now, and they're still not in new things that are being printed, there's still the influence of these organizations.
Clearly, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
So another example, just wanted kind of showing that this isn't just a ragtag of just like nowadays you would say, okay, we've got these crazy backwards people in the hills in the Middle East conspiring to take away our freedoms, or are these the gangs, or are these just kind of radical militia guys just wanting to destroy Mormons? No, okay. In another official history of the state, it describes who was involved in this and what were their, kind of how did they plan to get rid of the Mormon theocracy. Quote, under cover of arming and organizing for protection, the secret society known as the Gentile League of Utah was formed. Within its program was the deliberate massacre of municipal officers and citizens. The deliberate massacre of municipal officers and citizens, okay? Now, who was involved with this? Judge Strickland, General Maxwell, Robert Newton Baskin. Robert Newton Baskin, probably nobody's ever heard of before, but he's one of the most influential people in Utah history that you haven't heard of before. He was a state legislator. He was mayor of Salt Lake. He was one of those federal marshals. And another guy by Reverend Norman McLeod and other federal, state, and local officials. Okay, these were elected officials and imposed on us from the federal government that were a part of the secret society with the agenda of massacring municipal officers. In fact, Judge William Hayden declared in public that if they were opposed, the streets of Salt Lake would be seen running with blood.
So that wasn't necessarily a definitive plan. They're going to do this. It was, we will take it this far if we're opposed and if we're not successful in doing it
right
any other way.
We will take it up a notch to the levels of violence. And like I said, they weren't like what we think of radicals today. These were all major officials from the federal, state, and local level that were involved in this conspiracy.
Robert Newton Baskin would have been the equivalent 100-plus years ago of today's Orrin Hatch. He's a federal official.
He's a federal official, right.
Right.
Only difference is that Orrin claims to be LDS, where Robert Newton Baskin was an open anti-Mormon. So, but yeah, these were different officials that came through, and it'd be like Mayor Buskepsky coming out and saying, "There's going to be blood in the streets if we don't get our way."
Right.
Can you? I mean, just amazing. Okay, so in 1886, another organization that was not, again, mentioned in the 700-page history of Utah put out by the Utah State University Press.
This book is called Utah's History by Richard D. Pohl, Thomas Alexander, Eugene Campbell, Davie Miller. This is the official history of Utah that
is published today.
It's clean of all this information. Okay, keep
as
going,
opposed
Ben.
to the old information. So in 1886, another secret society was formed called the Utah Loyal League. And according to the Loyal League's constitution, it was to be an association open to its general object, but secret as to its proceedings. Its purpose was set forth in the form of enrolling list and said that the object of the Utah Loyal League were to combine male and females, irrespective of politics, in opposition to the political rule and practices of the Mormon Church. So it wasn't just about getting rid of them politically. They wanted to get rid of the practices of the Mormon Church, to oppose the admission of Utah into the Union until the state has the substance as well as the form of Republican government. And they also said, so in another state official history, it said the Utah Loyal League was formed, a branch of the city. It was organized in Park City as well. And the purpose of the Loyal League was to eradicate by force the doctrines of the Mormons.
So here's part of the evidence that today the church does not wield power over Utah politics, is because they said their mission, these societies, was to destroy their influence. Otherwise, we would never become a state.
Right.
They weren't going to allow us to become a state.
To be protected by the Constitution, because as a territory, we had zero protections.
Well, the fact that we're a state now shows that they were satisfied that they
were able to accomplish their ends.
Exactly. Right.
And so in another organization, they started forming different things called like the Democratic Club. And their goal was the displacement of church-oriented political parties and moving us towards these national parties. And so there were several different organizations during the 1800s with these goals. And just like today, you've got, just kind of in our minds to kind of picture the mindset. You've got the communists and the socialists, who essentially have the same end in mind, but how do you go about doing it is kind of the main difference. One has violent revolution as their goal, or as their strategy, and the other one has step-by-step measures to getting it done. They realized that they couldn't just be talking about blood in the streets all the time, and so they started to do it slowly through these more kind of piecemeal, step-by-step, changing the culture type of attitudes.
So
to be
the
able to get things
strategy
done.
of this conspiracy changed from being so direct,
right,
to more subversive,
exactly,
in their means and measures.
And this continued on. We've had Heather Gardner on. She ran for Senate. This continues on to today, that this is a continuous program, even though they might change the names, and that's essentially what they do. They actually admitted that when they are found out, that they have to change their names. And so so what you have to do is not look at the names of the organizations, but look at the aims of the organizations. And when Heather Gardner was running for state Senate earlier this year, she came across an individual in her activities that, and this is what she said. Heather Gardner says, quote, "I spoke to a constituent yesterday who said that her good friend Lane Beatty, the president of the Salt Lake Chamber, he is struggling because they admit their main purpose is to spread out the Mormon influence in politics and to make sure Mormons do not hold office like they are doing in Salt Lake County." So they've been really effective, they claim, in Salt Lake County of doing this.
So even today, they didn't just stop this when we became a state.
Right.
They keep it going, and even today, the reason why Salt Lake City is so not Mormon politically now is because of this program they've been working.
Right.
And they want to spread that throughout the whole state.
Throughout the whole state, absolutely, and they're working to do that. And there's more, and they do change their name. And there's other organizations that are around today still with the same goals. And we're going to talk about that when we get back from the break. We're heading there in just a couple minutes. I don't want to I want to leave that over, and so I want to kind of, as we tease that, who are the current organizations doing this? Let you know about defendingutah.org. If you go there, you can support the work that we're doing to find out the truth about what's going on so that we can be more effective in preserving liberty in our state. Because I bet you didn't know that these things were going on and that there were people that were elected officials working to destroy the political influence of a certain group of people. And so if you don't know that there's people out there doing that, how can you be effective in stopping them? Because they're secret organizations, and so they come out saying that they're a part of one thing, that they're on your side, when behind the scenes they're doing something else, which we can get into when we get back from the break. But if you want to help us in our efforts to expose these things and to bring these things to light, we hope you go to defendingutah.org, click on the membership link, and give a one-time donation or become a member and find out more about these things. We talk about these things regularly. We go into the details with our members and with our membership publications about what's really going on, who they are in the past and today.
So you have a CD of enough information that it would take a lifetime to read through it all, right?
I have a 3-disc DVD set of documents that are originals that you can't get. You can't just Google search these. These are original documents of journals, of official public records, of documents that you have to go through the archives of universities, and they don't allow you to take pictures of.
So you'd give that as a thank you gift to someone if they wanted to donate a certain amount?
If you donated, if you gave us a gift of $50, we would, as a thank you, we would send that 3-disc document set to you, and you can do that through the defendingutah.org website. And it has all of this information to be able to help you in your own research to find out for yourself. And then it would also help us in our own efforts, because this is an essential part of really restoring the culture and being able to defend liberty, is to understand, because as we mentioned in the last segment, you had George Orwell tell us that the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. We have to know this, and we'll learn more about it when we come back for the break. This is the Liberty Lineup. I am Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore on AM 630.
Complete transmission through the NSA, suspending your rights for the duration of the permanent war.
Hello, we are back. This is Ben McClintock and
Enoch Moore
of defendingutah.org, and we are on AM 630 K-Talk. We are talking about defending Utah. We haven't we've been on the air for about a year now on Thursdays on the part of the Liberty Lineup, but we've never really talked about who we are and what we're about. And so I think I'd be able to give you an in-depth understanding of kind of the foundations of what we are. We've been talking about the history that we help people understand so that they can be more effective in their fight for liberty, in their efforts to fight for liberty. And so that's what we've been discussing before the break, and about how there's been secret societies in the past that aren't mentioned in any of the modern-day history books, but are in all of the official histories of in the 1800s. But we've got a history book published by the University of Utah, or is that Utah State? This one is by Utah State University, sorry. And we've got the official textbooks for high school students. And these organizations that were influential, that threatened blood in the streets if their agenda didn't go through. And these were elected officials, people that were marshals, people that were judges, people that were mayors threatening these things. And their influence and their goals are not in any of the modern-day histories of our state. And that we mentioned that these things are continuing to this day, the same goals. And they admit that when they're found out, they change their names. And so you don't look at names, you look at goals and how they're consistent throughout time to understand if it's the same thing.
And we talked a little bit before, you mentioned a name, Lane Beatty, and that he had seen people. He was a source.
Working on this
He was a source where he saw people working on this, not necessarily calling him out. So we'll just clarify that.
Somebody, yeah.
Not necessarily right. We haven't looked into that or anything, but he had seen it, that this movement in Salt Lake City, that there are people who want to see that go throughout the entire state.
Right. And so he was concerned about that, but he was saying and recognizing that it was a real thing.
Right.
And that there are people involved in this today. There's another organization today that it's so crazy how much effort they put into their own logo. They call themselves, they even use their own hashtag called Utah Illuminati. I mean, that's just...
Like they think it's funny.
Right. They're just like
it's a
so
joke
in
to
your
them.
face, it's hilarious. And their logo is the Illuminati all-seeing eye. And they're a group of lawyers and government workers and legislators all working together, and the people, other elected officials. And these are people, okay, some of the people in this organization are people that are thought of as great conservatives and people that are working to defend our liberty. But they have, let me tell you about their goals. They are continuing the same program that we talked about earlier from these groups from the 1800s. And one of their leaders, one of their founders, worked for Governor Herbert as his campaign staffer, and he's now an employee of the State Department of Workforce Services. Okay, so a government employee that worked for the Republican governor in his campaign. And he said that Utah is barely over 50% Mormon and shrinking. Salt Lake City is very Democrat and one of the gayest cities in the United States, and proud of it. Salt Lake just elected Jackie Buskepsky as mayor, and she is openly gay. It's a pretty great state and getting better.
And Jackie Buskepsky stood up and said at the last Pride Festival, "We run this city."
She said,
Right.
"This is our city. This is our building, and we are running this city."
And now you have, and that original guy you said that was part of this group
Yeah.
with that logo, the fact that they call themselves Utah Illuminati, even just joking, they tweet to each other, Utah Illuminati, whether or not they're actually Illuminati or whatever, they're calling themselves that.
Right.
So they clearly recognize the pattern that is
And they're following the same
associated.
agenda as the Illuminati.
Well, and even if one argues with whether Illuminati is a real thing or not a real thing, clearly they're associated with people who seek for power and control,
Right.
regardless. So that's what the understanding is. So they're calling themselves that because they think, we're a bunch of people, and that's pretty funny, and that we're doing this,
Right.
And
State officials, state officials. I mean, it's just these are not your crazy whack jobs that are doing this. These are
people you guys elected,
right? And you
Okay.
know, and you probably like a lot of them,
right?
because not because you know them, but because you think you know them from what they said on Facebook or what they did in public office or whatever, but not what they're doing behind the scenes. And you can see by their voting records, not what the media promotes them as, but you see how everybody in the legislature, the most conservative and the most liberal in the legislature, vote about 90% of the time together.
That sort of hints at coordination.
And only surface level disagreement. Ronald Reagan said that and a person that I agree with 80% of the time is not my 20% enemy, but my friend and my ally. And so that means that, I mean, if you follow Ronald Reagan's advice and thinking on that, then you have to come to the conclusion that the most so-called conservative in the legislature is a good friend of the most, not good friend, but ally, politically speaking, with the most liberal member of the legislature, and they are working heavily behind the scenes according to their own statements to undermine the influence that our great state was founded upon. The state of Utah was founded upon the principles and ideas of our Constitution. They escaped the United States because they were not applying the Constitution. They were not allowed to have the Constitution.
They were denied their constitutional rights, so they said, okay, let's reestablish constitutional principles
here.
And if the church was allowed to wield political power in this state, like liberals accuse, what we would see is a restoration of constitutional principles.
You'd see limited government.
You would see a protection
freedom
of religious liberty for all, without question, and people generally being left alone like everyone is hoping for. That's what you would actually see if the church was wielding power, because it is fundamental to the faith of the LDS Church to respect the free agency of others, so long as you do not.
The official motto of the time
others.
was mind your own business. Saints will observe this and all others should.
Wouldn't that be great if our government was just doing that? So people who seek for power don't want the church to wield the influence and have true constitutional principles of freedom implemented in government.
Right. And so understanding these things, this is key. We were talking about earlier about this is what defending Utah is all about. And we hope that we'll get your support. You will help us out either through a one-time donation. We have gifts for a $50 gift. We have a thank you of all of our documents that we would send to you. For a $500 gift, we would give you a lifetime membership, which is like $15,000 normally to Front Sight weapons training down in Las Vegas.
As a thank you gift.
As a thank you gift. And then we have membership, which is kind of a long-term support to help us out. You like what we're doing and you want to support us. You can do those things. And so we hope that you'll do that. We're just kind of giving you a sneak peek of the information that we have that show that we can be effective because we understand who the enemy is. We're not fooled by the wolves in sheep's clothing. The guy that says, yay, Constitution, in public, and then behind the scenes says, hey, we need to destroy liberty. Hey, we need to make government bigger. Hey, we need to destroy checks and balances. Hey, we need to create a new state bureaucracy that takes away the accountability of government and takes away the power of the sheriff. And so then we can organize together to be effective, and we provide literature, we produce videos, we produce the tools that you need to be able to preserve liberty. And so if you like those things and you've been able to kind of get a glimpse of, Defending Utah understands the big picture and is in a position to actually be effective in preserving liberty, we hope that you'll go to our website, defendingutah.org, and support us in whatever way that you can.
And feel free to contact us if you want to chat more and have more questions to get further understanding on any of these things. You can call our number, or you can just submit on our Contact Us page. Our number is 801-877-3205. But if you are passionate about liberty and defending the Constitution and the principles behind it, and you already are involved in groups, if you don't have the rest of this information that's come to light, then you're fighting with one eye closed or blindfolded because you don't know who some of these wolves in sheep's clothing are and the other organizations that they have other loyalties to. So that's just something to consider, something that gives us more insight in as we look at history and we look at the big picture. So what are some other goodies you have there, Ben, in your pile of history there?
So I wanted to kind of give an example of how the history we're being lied to about our history. Not only is it being left out, but when it is brought in there, we're being lied to. So I mentioned the Gentile League, which threatened blood in the streets. And then there's the Utah, which was not mentioned one single time in this 700-page tome put out by the Utah State University about Utah's history. So I mentioned in the original historical record, the Utah Loyal League's job was to oppose, through force, Mormonism, the church, its political influence, and its doctrines even. Okay, that's what it's back in the 1800s, what the official record said it was. Well, now the Utah State University comes out with its one reference in its 700-page book, is that there were young groups, there were different clubs for youth, and extracurricular activities in the Loyal Leagues, Liberty Brigades, sewing circles, and similar youth clubs would bind them to Protestantism.
So the official Utah history, what page is that on?
328.
Okay. One time they gave a quick, brief mention to these secret societies, but they just called it a youth group.
A youth club.
A youth club.
This is a youth club.
Which contradicts the earlier Utah records that said they were this
A
secret
society
Yeah.
designed to use government force to get rid of the Mormon influence in the state. And so just one example of what we're doing, and we're coming out with, there's a lot of different organizations that have come out with debunking a lot of the myths about the Founding Fathers and re-emphasizing their inspired activities. Well, there's been a direct effort to do the same thing of eroding and degrading the Founding Fathers of Utah. And we're developing a curriculum to help youth understand what are the great inspired foundations of this state. And if you would like to help that out, that's another activity that your gift to Defending Utah will help support.
And if you want more information on that, please do call us, and we can give you more details if you're interested in getting involved and helping make that a reality. But we are just about out of time today, and this has been fascinating to hear about a lot of the research that you and your team have been doing, Ben. And there's so much more. You couldn't cover this if we were on the air 24/7 straight for 3 months. We couldn't say it all. That's part of why you have the CD,
right,
to give that has people can peruse it on their own. And that's it. We're out of time for today. Ben, thanks for everything about Defending Utah. Please check out defendingutah.org. Check out ktalkmedia.com. And check out our Facebook page. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Defending Utah Radio is on YouTube. And we'll see you next week on The Naked Truth.
Stay tuned next for Alex Jones on K-Talk AM 630.
And why do we back down at the critical moment, like running away from the waves of the ocean?